Who proposed that Earth was only 6,000 years old?
In the 17th century, Archbishop James Ussher, 1581–1656, of the Irish Protestant Church, calculated from the Old Testament genealogies that Earth was created on Sunday, October 26, 4004 CE. He was also able to calculate exact dates for when Adam and Eve were forced from paradise, Monday, November 10, 4004 BCE, and when Noah's Ark touched down on Mt Ararat, Wednesday, May 5, 1491 BCE.
What does genetics have to do with behavior?
Some ethologists feel that all behavior is genetically programmed. If a behavior is under genetic control, then it is a sequence of events. Sign, stimulus, releasing mechanism, and fixed action pattern. However, the mainstream view is that most or all behavior is a result of a combination of genetic programming and environmental learning.
Why do some animals only have a few offspring?
Females have a finite amount of energy that they can allocate to the growth and maintenance of offspring. Therefore, two basic strategies have evolved for successful reproduction. 1. Produce many small offspring, only some of whom may survive. Or 2. Produce just a few larger offspring, each with a higher likelihood of survival.
What is the difference between catabolic and anabolic reactions?
Catabolic and anabolic reactions are metabolic processes. Both the capture and use of energy by organisms involves a series of thousands of reactions, metabolism. A catabolic reaction is one that breaks down large molecules to produce energy, an example is digestion. An anabolic reaction is one that involves creating large molecules out of smaller molecules. An example is when your body makes fat out of extra nutrients you eat.
Who first proposed a model for the plasma membrane?
Following the earlier work of Gorder and Grendel on cell membranes, Hugh Davison, 1909–1996, and James F. Danieli, 1911–1984, proposed a sandwich model for the structure of cell membranes in 1935. This model was a phospholipid bilayer between two layers of globular proteins. Since cell membranes are so fragile in vivo, one can only propose theoretical models for their structure. Current techniques still do not permit direct observation of the functioning of plasma membranes.
What is the Benedict's test for reducing sugars?
A commonly used test to detect carbohydrates is the Benedict's test for reducing sugars such as glucose and fructose. Benedict's reagent, containing sodium bicarbonate, sodium citrate, and copper sulfate, is added to a solution and heated. The Benedict's test identifies reducing sugars based on their ability to reduce the cupric ions to cuprous oxide at high pH values, basic solutions. Cuprous oxide is green to reddish-orange. A green solution indicates a small amount of reducing sugars, while a reddish-orange solution indicates an abundance of reducing sugars. If the solution contains sucrose, a non-reducing sugar, there is no change in color in the solution, and it remains blue.
What is the scientific study of fungi called?
The scientific study of fungi is called mycology, which is derived from the Greek word mykote, meaning fungus. The first extensive taxonomical study of fungi, Systemia Mycologicum, was published by Elias Fries, 1794–1878, and Christian Hendrik Persoon, 1761–1836. In 1821–32. The book is still considered the authoritative resource on fungal taxonomy.
In the life cycles of bryophytes, which is dominant, the sporophyte or gametophyte?
In all of the bryophytes, mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, gametophytes are the most conspicuous, dominant phase. A mat of moss consists of haploid gametophytes. Sporophytes are typically smaller and present only part of the time.
What is the one gene one enzyme hypothesis?
In the 1930s, George Beadle, 1903–1989, and Boris F. Russey, 1901–1979, theorized that the variety of fruit fly mutations might be due to mutations of individual genes that code for each of the enzymes involved in a given pathway. Subsequently, Beadle and Edward Tatum, 1909–1975, performed a series of experiments with the orange bread mold Neurospora that elucidated the enzymatic pathway required by the fungus to produce a specific nutritional requirement, arginine. The researchers were able to create a series of mutants, each lacking in a different enzyme in the pathway. In this way they were able to piece together the sequence of events required for the production of arginine and thereby show where each mutant fit. The work of Beadle and Tatum provided important support for the one gene one enzyme hypothesis, which holds that the function of a gene is to produce a specific enzyme. Their work garnered a Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1958.
Why are arthropods considered the most biologically successful phylum of animals?
Members of the phylum Arthropoda are characterized by jointed appendages and an exoskeleton of chitin. There are more than 1 million species of arthropods currently known to science. And many biologists believe there are millions more to be identified. Arthropods are the most biologically successful group of animals because they are the most diverse and live in a greater range of habitats than do the members of any other phylum of animals.
Is there an average lifespan of a cell?
No. Most living cells do not live longer than a month. Even cells that live longer, such as liver and brain cells, constantly renew their components so that no part of the cell is really more than a month old. One example of a cell with a longer lifespan is the memory B cell. Memory B cells can survive for several decades, even a lifetime, providing an immune response to pathogens invading for a second time.
What is a seed?
A seed is a mature, fertilized ovule. It consists of the seed embryo and the nutrient-rich tissue called the endosperm. The embryo consists of a miniature root and shoot. Once the seed is protected and enclosed in a seed coat, it ceases further development and becomes dormant.
What is the difference between a food chain and a food web?
A food chain refers to transfer of energy from producers through herbivores through carnivores in a community. An example of a food chain would be little fishes eating plankton, and those little fishes in turn being eaten by bigger fishes. The term food web is broader, as it includes interconnected food chains within a specific ecosystem. Perhaps the bigger fishes eat the plankton as well. A food web describes a nutritional portrait of the ecosystem. In 1927, Charles Elton, 1868 to 1945, was one of the first scientists to diagram a food web. In his case, a description of feeding relationships on Bear Island in the Arctic.
What is the ecological role of lichens?
Lichens account for approximately 8% of the vegetation covering Earth's surface. In certain environments, such as regions of tundra, they cover vast areas of land. Lichens delay global warming by consuming significant amounts of carbon dioxide. CO2, during photosynthesis. When they cover the ground, they prevent soil from drying out. In desert areas, they are able to capture and conserve the moisture present in fog and dew. Lichens release nutrients, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, which are important in regions with nutrient-poor soils as the nutrients aid tree growth. Lichens are also an important food source for many species of animals, including wild turkeys and reindeer of the Arctic tundra. Birds such as the olive-headed weaver of Madagascar and the goldfinch of Europe use lichens to build their nests.
What do the numbers on a bag of fertilizer indicate?
The three numbers, such as 15-20-15, refer to the percentages by weight of macronutrients found in the fertilizer. The first number stands for nitrogen, the second for phosphorus, and the third for potassium. In order to determine the actual amount of each element in the fertilizer, multiply the percentage by the fertilizer's total weight in pounds. For example, in a 50-pound bag of 15-20-15, there are 7.5 pounds of nitrogen, 10 pounds of phosphorus, and 7.5 pounds of potassium. The remaining pounds are filler.
Do animals suffer from allergies?
Veterinarians report that dogs and cats suffer from allergies. They may be allergic to food, insect bites, dust, household chemicals, or pollen. Instead of having runny noses and watery eyes, animals experience itchy skin conditions, difficulty in breathing, or disruptions in the digestive tract.
Why do animals defend territories?
Animals defend territories to protect their assets such as food, water, or mates. Animals will also defend the area where their offspring live, because in evolutionary terms offspring are the ultimate asset.
How much wood is needed to make 1 ton of paper?
In the United States, wood pulp is usually used in paper manufacturing. Pulp is usually measured by cord or weight. Although the fiber used in making paper is derived overwhelmingly from wood, many other ingredients are needed as well. 1 ton of paper typically requires 2 cords of wood, 55,000 gal, 208,000 L, of water, 102 pounds 46 kilograms of sulfur, 350 pounds 159 kilograms of lime, 289 pounds 131 kilograms of clay, 1.2 tons of coal, 112 kilowatt-hours of power, 20 pounds, 9 g, of dye and pigment, and 108 pounds 49 kilograms of starch. Other ingredients may also be necessary.
What is an artificial chromosome?
An artificial chromosome is a new type of vector that allows cloning of larger pieces of DNA. It consists of a telomere at each end, a centromere sequence, and specific sites at which foreign DNA can be inserted. Once the DNA fragment is spliced in, the engineered chromosome is reinserted into a yeast cell. The yeast then reproduces the chromosome as if it were part of the normal yeast genome. As a result, a colony of yeast cells would then all contain a specific fragment of DNA.
How do cells become tissues?
Tissues are comprised of different types of cells that have a common purpose or function. Multicellular organisms are so complex that tissues are needed to perform vital functions such as support, transportation, and the movement of animal cells. In animals, the groups of cells that form tissue may become structurally linked via their cytoskeletons and membranes. As an example, epithelial cells are anchored to underlying connective tissue by a basement membrane. These cells are often exposed to mechanical stress, and a system of cell junctions between epithelial cells helps them respond when stretched.
What is the origin of the term cell?
The term cell was first used by Robert Hooke, 1635 to 1703, an English scientist who described cells he observed in a slice of cork in 1665. Using a microscope that magnified 30 times. Hooke identified little chambers or compartments in the cork that he called celluli. A Latin term meaning little rooms because they reminded him of the cells inhabited by monks. It is from this word that we got the modern term cell. He calculated that 1 square inch of cork would contain 1,259,712,000 of these tiny chambers or cells.
What is polygyny?
Polygyny is a type of mating system that involves pair bonds between one male and several females. While this may at first seem unfair to females, in a polygynous system every female can usually have a mate, while only the most desirable males will find a mate.
Do cells have specific shapes?
While it doesn't seem that animal cells have a specific shape, they all have a cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton enables cells to assume and maintain complex shapes, such as the star-like shape of a neuron or the biconcave shape of a red blood cell. Epithelial and connective tissues also have very particular shapes. The columnar epithelium resembles a wall of bricks. Plant cells usually have a specific shape due to their rigid cell wall, which decreases the elasticity of the cell.
Is hemlock poisonous?
There are two species known commonly as hemlock, Conium maculatum and Tsuga canadensis. Conium maculatum is a weedy plant, and all parts of it are poisonous. In ancient times, minimal doses of the plant were used to relieve pain. Although there was a great risk of poisoning from this form of treatment. Conium maculatum was also used to carry out death sentences in ancient times. The Greek philosopher Socrates was condemned to death and sentenced to drink a potion made from hemlock. The poisonous species should not be confused with Tsuga canadensis, a member of the evergreen family. The leaves of T. canadensis are not poisonous and are often used to make tea.
Are there reliable rules to identify poisonous mushrooms?
There are no general, reliable rules to identify poisonous mushrooms. Some of the edible varieties are quite easily recognized. But some edible varieties closely resemble poisonous mushrooms and can only be distinguished by an expert. The common lore that poisonous mushrooms make silver spoons turn black, while mushrooms that can be peeled are edible, is not true. Some of the deadliest mushrooms, amanitas, do not turn silver spoons black and can be peeled. The only rule to follow is that one must be able to identify a mushroom with certainty prior to eating it.
How are bacteriophages classified?
Bacteriophages are classified as either lytic or temperate. Lytic phages destroy the host cell. When a lytic virus infects a susceptible host cell, it uses the host's metabolic machinery to replicate viral nucleic acid and produce viral proteins. There are 5 steps in this process: attachment, penetration, replication, assembly, and release. During this process, which takes approximately 30 minutes, almost 100 phages are released. Temperate phages do not always destroy their host cell. After attachment and penetration, the DNA from a temperate phage becomes incorporated into the host bacterial DNA. It is then referred to as a prophage. The prophage replicates at the same time as the bacterial DNA. The viral genes may be repressed indefinitely. Bacterial cells carrying prophages are known as lysogenic cells.
How are chromosomes assembled?
Chromosomes are assembled on a scaffold of proteins, hist-1s, that allow DNA to be tightly packed. There are 5 major types of hist-1s, all of which have a positive charge. The positive charges of the hist-1s attract the negative charges on the phosphates of DNA, thus holding the DNA in contact with the hist-1s. These thicker strands of DNA and proteins are called chromatin. Chromatin is then packed to form the familiar structure of a chromosome. During mitosis, chromosomes acquire characteristic shapes that allow them to be counted and identified.
What is so good about fish oil?
Fish oils, extracted from species such as mackerel, salmon, anchovy, sardines, and tuna, are excellent sources of the essential omega-3 fatty acids. However, they are not the only possible source. Nuts and seeds also provide omega-3 fatty acids. Nutritionists recommend that these fatty acids be acquired through a healthy and diverse diet rather than by taking nutrient supplements.
How do elephants find each other across the savanna?
Although elephants are well known for the trumpeting calls that they make when angry or disturbed, they are also capable of using ultrasound, sounds above the range of human hearing, and infrasound, sounds below the range of human hearing, to communicate with one another. Researchers have concluded that elephants may be able to hear ultrasonic calls from as far away as 2.5 miles 4 kilometers. In contrast, it is estimated that an infrasonic call by a male elephant could in fact cover an area of 11.6 square miles 30 square kilometers.
What are the components of smog?
Smog, the most widespread pollutant in the United States, causes a photochemical reaction that produces ground-level ozone, an odorless and tasteless gas. Ozone, in the presence of light, can initiate a chain of chemical reactions. However, while ozone is desirable in the stratospheric layer of the atmosphere, defending Earth's surface from radiation, it can be hazardous to health when found near Earth's surface in the troposphere. The hydrocarbons, hydrocarbon derivations, and nitric oxides emitted from such sources as automobiles are the raw materials for these photochemical reactions. In the presence of oxygen and sunlight, the nitric oxides combine with organic compounds such as the hydrocarbons from unburned gasoline to produce a whitish haze, sometimes tinged with a yellow-brown color. In the process, a large number of new hydrocarbons and oxyhydrocarbons are produced. These secondary hydrocarbon products may compose as much as 95% of the total organics in a severe smog episode.
Which antibacterial products are the most effective for general use?
Non-residue producing agents, such as hydrogen peroxide and bleach, are effective agents for controlling microbes. Several consumer products with residue-producing agents have proved to be effective for specific conditions. For example, antibacterial toothpaste helps control periodontal disease. Antibacterial deodorants suppress odor-causing bacteria, and anti-dandruff shampoos help control dandruff.
What is the most dangerous poison produced by a plant?
In North America, the poisonous hemlock, Conium maculatum, is probably the most dangerous plant. The South American lana tree is another dangerous plant. Native Americans used its sap to make curare, a poisonous substance applied to their arrows and spears. It can cause death in a matter of minutes.
Which mammal has the shortest gestation period? Which one has the longest period?
Gestation is the period of time between fertilization and birth in oviparous animals. The shortest gestation period known among mammals is 12 to 13 days, shared by 3 marsupials. The American or Virginian opossum, Didelphis marsupialis, the rare water opossum, or yapak, Chironectes minimus. Of Central and Northern South America, and the eastern native cat, Dosiurus vivarinus, of Australia. The young of each of these marsupials are born while still immature, and complete their development in the ventral pouch of their mother. While 12 to 13 days is the average, the gestation period is sometimes as short as 8 days. The longest gestation period for a mammal is that of the African elephant, Loxodonta africana, with an average of 660 days and a maximum of 760 days.
What is a virus?
A virus is an infectious, protein-coded fragment of DNA or RNA. Viruses replicate by invading host cells and taking over the cell's machinery for DNA replication. Viral particles can then break out of the cells, spreading disease.
Where is epithelial tissue found?
Epithelial tissue, also called epithelium, from the Greek epi, meaning on, and the li, meaning nipple, covers every surface, both external and internal, of the body. The outer layer of the skin, the epidermis, is one example of epithelial tissue. Other examples of epithelial tissue are the lining of the lungs, kidney tubules, and the inner surfaces of the digestive system, including the esophagus, stomach, and intestines. Epithelial tissue also includes the lining of parts of the respiratory system.
Which first aid measures can be used for a bite by a black widow spider?
The black widow spider, Latrodectus mactans, is common throughout the United States. Its bite is severely poisonous, but no first aid measures are of value. Age, body size, and degree of sensitivity determine the severity of symptoms, which include an initial pinprick with a dull numbing pain, followed by swelling. An ice cube may be placed 252 over the bite to relieve pain. Between 10 and 40 minutes after the bite. Severe abdominal pain and rigidity of stomach muscles develop. Muscle spasms in the extremities, ascending paralysis, and difficulty in swallowing and breathing may follow. The mortality rate is less than 1%, but anyone who has been bitten should see a doctor. The elderly, infants, and those with allergies are most at risk and may require hospitalization.
How are fibers classified?
Fibers are classified in several ways. One way to classify fibers is based on their location, that is, whether or not they are in the xylem. Fibers in xylem are called xylary fibers, while those found in other tissues are called extraxillary fibers. Extraxillary fibers are usually longer than xylary ones. Fibers may also be classified according to their hardness. Hard fibers are from monocots and include xylem, thus making them lignified and stiff. An example of a hard fiber is rope made from sisal, Agave cisalina. Soft fibers, also called bast fibers, are harvested from dicots lacking lignin and are generally stronger and more durable than fibers from monocots. An example of a soft fiber is linen from flax, Linum usitatissimum.
What is tissue engineering?
Tissue engineering is used to create semi-synthetic tissues that are used to replace or support the function of defective or injured body parts. It is a broad field, encompassing cell biology, biomaterial engineering, microscopic engineering, robotics, and bioreactors, where tissues are grown and nurtured. Tissue engineering can improve on current medical therapies by designing replacements that mimic natural tissue function. Commercially produced skin is already in use for treating patients with burns and diabetic ulcers.
Why did dinosaurs become extinct?
There are many theories as to why dinosaurs disappeared from Earth about 65 million years ago. Scientists debate whether dinosaurs became extinct gradually or all at once. The gradualists believe that the dinosaur population steadily declined at the end of the Cretaceous period. Numerous reasons have been proposed for this. Some claim the dinosaurs' extinction was caused by biological changes that made them less competitive with other organisms, especially the mammals that were just beginning to appear. Overpopulation has been argued, as has the theory that mammals ate so many dinosaur eggs that dinosaur reproduction was irrevocably harmed. Others believe that disease, everything from rickets to constipation, wiped the dinosaurs out. Changes in climate, continental drift, volcanic eruptions, and shifts in Earth's axis, orbit, and/or magnetic field have also been held responsible. The catastrophists argue that a single disastrous event caused the extinction not only of the dinosaurs but also of a large number of other species that coexisted with them. In 1980, the American physicist Luis Alvarez, 1911–1988, and his geologist son Walter Alvarez, 1940, proposed that a large comet or meteoroid struck Earth 65 million years ago. They pointed out that there is a high concentration of the element iridium in the sediments at the boundary between the Cretaceous and Tertiary periods. Iridium is rare on Earth, so the only source of such a large amount of it had to be outer space. This iridium anomaly has since been discovered at over 50 sites around the world. In 1990, tiny glass fragments, which could have been caused by the extreme heat of an impact, were identified in Haiti. A 110 miles 177 kilometers wide crater in the Yucatan Peninsula, long covered by sediments, has been dated to 64.98 million years ago, making it a leading candidate for the site of this impact. A hit by a large extraterrestrial object, perhaps as much as 6 miles 9.3 kilometers wide, would have had a catastrophic effect upon the world's climate. Huge amounts of dust and debris would have been thrown into the atmosphere, reducing the amount of sunlight reaching the surface. Heat from the blast may also have caused large forest fires, which would have added smoke and ash to the air. Lack of sunlight would kill off plants and have a domino-like effect on other organisms in the food chain, including the dinosaurs. It is possible that the reason for the dinosaurs' extinction may have been a combination of both theories. The dinosaurs may have been gradually declining, for whatever reason. The impact of a large object from space merely delivered the coup de grace. The fact that dinosaurs became extinct has been cited as proof of their inferiority and that they were evolutionary failures. However, these animals flourished for 150 million years. By comparison, the earliest ancestors of humanity appeared only about 3 million years ago. Humans have a long way to go before they can claim the same sort of success as the dinosaurs.
Why was Wallace not as well known as Darwin?
While Darwin was well connected to the scientific establishment of the time, Wallace entered the scene somewhat later and so was less well known. Although Darwin would become far more famous than Wallace in subsequent decades. Wallace became quite well known during his own time as a naturalist, writer, and lecturer. He was also honored with numerous awards for his work.
How do animals and people identify smells?
The sense of smell allows animals and humans as well as other organisms to identify food, mates, and predators. This sense also provides sensory pleasure, e.g., flowers, and warnings of danger, example chemical dangers. There are specialized receptor cells in the nose that have proteins that bind chemical odorants and cause the receptor cells to send electrical signals to the olfactory bulb of the brain. Cells in the olfactory bulb relay this information to olfactory areas of the forebrain to generate perception of smells.
Is there a cat that lives in the desert?
The sand cat, Felis margarita, is the only member of the cat family tied directly to desert regions. Found in the deserts of North Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and western Pakistan, the sand cat has adapted to extremely arid desert areas. The padding on the soles of its feet is well suited to the loose sandy soil, and it can live without drinking freestanding water. Having sandy or grayish ochre dense fur, its body length is 17.5 to 22 in, 45 to 57 centimeters. Mainly nocturnal, active at night, the cat feeds on rodents, hares, birds, and reptiles. The Chinese desert cat, Felis biati, does not live in the desert as its name implies, but inhabits the steppe country and mountains. Likewise, the Asiatic desert cat, Felis sylvestris ornata, inhabits the open plains of India, Pakistan, Iran, and Asiatic Russia.
What names are used for groups of birds?
A group of birds in general is called a congregation, flight, flock, volée, or volley.
What sources do muscle cells use for energy?
Muscle cells use a variety of energy sources to power their contractions. For quick energy, the cells utilize their stores of ATP and creatine phosphate, which is another phosphate-containing compound. These stored molecules are usually depleted within the first 20 seconds of activity. The cells then switch to other sources, most notably glycogen, a carbohydrate that is made of glucose molecules strung together in long branching chains.
How can animals be grouped according to body symmetry?
Symmetry refers to the arrangement of body structures in relation to the axis of the body. Most animals exhibit either radial or bilateral body symmetry. Animals such as jellyfishes, sea anemones, and starfishes have radial symmetry. In radial symmetry, the body has the general form of a wheel or cylinder, and similar structures are arranged as spokes from a central axis. The bodies of all other animals are marked by bilateral symmetry, a design in which the body has right and left halves that are mirror images of each other. A bilaterally symmetrical body plan has a top and a bottom, also known respectively as the dorsal and ventral portions of the body. It also has a front, or anterior, end and a back, or posterior, end.
Was the Exxon Valdez spill the largest oil spill of the 20th century?
Although the Exxon Valdez was widely publicized as a major spill of 255,500 barrels, 35,000 tons, in 1989, it was not the largest of the century. The first major commercial oil spill occurred on March 18, 1967, when the tanker Torrey Canyon grounded on the Seven Stones Shoal off the coast of Cornwall, England, spilling 830,000 barrels, 119,000 tons, of Kuwaiti oil into the sea. This was the first major tanker accident. However, during World War II, German U-boat attacks on tankers between January and June 1942 spilled 4.3 million barrels, 590,000 tons, of oil off the east coast of the United States. Even this spill is dwarfed by the deliberate dumping of oil from Sea Island into the Persian Gulf during the First Gulf War in 1991. It is estimated that the Sea Island spill equaled almost 10.9 million barrels, 1.5 million tons, of oil. A major spill also occurred in Russia in October 1994 in the Komi region of the Arctic. The size of the spill was reported to be as much as 2 million barrels, 286,000 tons. In addition to the large disasters, day-to-day pollution occurs from drilling platforms where waste generated from platform life, including human waste and oils, chemicals, mud, and rock from drilling are discharged into the water.
What is an adaptation?
This term refers to how well an organism adapts to its environment. Adapted individuals survive and reproduce better than individuals without those adaptations. An example of an adaptation would be the long ears and limbs of rabbits living in desert-like conditions. These adaptations allow the rabbits to radiate heat more efficiently over a large surface area, thus making it easier to survive in a harsh climate.
Do bacteria ever reproduce sexually?
Although sexual reproduction involving the fusion of gametes does not occur in bacteria, genetic material is sometimes exchanged between bacteria. This is done in 3 different ways. The first method is a transformation in which fragments of DNA are released by a broken cell and taken in by another bacterial cell. The second possibility is a transduction in which a bacteriophage carries genetic material from one bacterial cell to another. Lastly, conjugation in which 2 cells of different mating types come together and exchange genetic material is also possible.
What is the relationship between telomeres and cancer?
Increased telomerase activity can increase longevity of cells, but it is also implicated in cancer formation. Almost 90% of cancer cells have been found to have enhanced telomerase activity. And a cancer cell usually divides about 80 times before a tumor mass becomes large enough to be detected. In contrast, normal human cells usually divide 30 to 50 times before telomeres become too short and doubling stops.
What term was originally used for DNA?
DNA was originally called nuclein because it was first isolated from the nuclei of cells. In the 1860s, Friedrich Miescher, 1844–1895, a Swiss biochemist working in Germany at the University of Tübingen lab of Felix Hoppeseeler, 1825–1895, was given the task of researching the composition of white blood cells. He found a good source of white blood cells from the used bandages that he obtained at a nearby hospital. He washed off the pus and isolated a new molecule from the cell nucleus. White blood cells have very large nuclei. He called the substance nuclein, which we now call DNA. The substance was rich in nitrogen and phosphorus and also contained carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Hoppeseeler checked and verified the important work of his student Miescher.
What is a stone plant?
The species Lithops turbiniformis is known by several common names, including stone plant, flowering stone, and living stone. The genus name Lithops comes from the Greek words lithos, which means stone, and opsis, meaning face or appearance. The plant is native to South Africa, Namibia, and the west coast of Africa. The plants are very difficult to see since their appearance mimics the rocks and stones of their natural habitat. They have 2 thick leaves and a single flower that is either yellow or white in color. Stone plants thrive in very arid conditions with minimal rainfall.
How can you avoid buying items made from endangered species?
The 1975 CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, prohibits trade in endangered species. Traffic, the Wildlife Trade Monitoring Network, suggests that travelers buy wisely. Although it may be legal to buy products in certain popular tourist locations, it is often illegal or may require a permit to bring these objects home.
What is a bioinvader?
A bioinvader is an exotic organism usually introduced into an ecosystem accidentally. These bioinvaders are non-native plants and often overwhelm the native species. Examples of bioinvaders include the kudzu vine. Kudzu was first introduced in the 1930s by the United States Soil Conservation Service for a good purpose to control erosion. Kudzu now grows uncontrolled in the southeastern United States, pulling down power lines and killing trees. Other bioinvader species include zebra mussels, Great Lakes, purple loosestrife, northern United States and Canada, and the Asian longhorned beetle, first reported in New York but now spreading into the Midwest.
What is meiosis?
Meiosis is often referred to as reduction division, meaning that the number of chromosomes present is reduced from 2n, diploid, to n, haploid. The meiotic process consists of two separate cell divisions and occurs in the gonads, ovaries and testis. It is most important to sexual reproduction because of genetic variation that occurs as a result of this process.
What part of the American chestnut tree does the fungus Criffonectria parasitica attack?
Criffonectria parasitica, or chestnut blight, attacks a tree's layers of living bark and the adjacent layers of wood. The fungus kills the cells present in the bark that serve the function of carrying the food made in the leaves of a tree to other parts of a tree. As such, nutrients are not able to reach various parts of a tree. The fungus also clogs the cells present in the wood of a tree's trunk that serve to carry water and nutrients through the body of a tree. This fungus leaves the roots of a tree unaffected, allowing a tree to send up new sprouts. However, within a number of years, the bark and wood of new sprouts also become affected.
How has the Human Genome Project changed scientists' estimates of the number of genes in humans?
The Human Genome Project has caused a drastic re-evaluation of the probable number of genes in the genome. As a result of the project, estimates have gone from 100,000 genes to somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000.
How much electricity does an electric eel generate?
An electric eel, Electrophorus electricus, has current-producing organs made up of electric plates. Modified muscle cells, on both sides of its vertebral column running almost its entire body length. The charge on the average of 350 volts. But as great as 550 volts is released by the central nervous system. The shock consists of 4 to 8 separate charges, each of which lasts only 2 to 3,000ths of a second. These shocks, used as a defense mechanism, can be repeated up to 150 times per hour without any visible fatigue to the eel. The most powerful electric eel, found in the rivers of Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru, produces a shock of 400 to 650 volts.
What are the problems an animal must overcome to move?
In contrast to other organisms, animals are able to move. The two forces an animal overcomes to move are gravity and friction. Aquatic animals do not have much difficulty overcoming gravity, since they are buoyant in water. However, because water is dense, the problem of resistance, friction, is greater for these animals. Many of them have sleek shapes to help them swim. Terrestrial animals tend to have fewer problems with friction, since air poses fewer problems of resistance than does water. However, terrestrial animals must work harder to overcome gravity.
How are animals classified based on what they eat?
Animals are classified based on whether they eat plants, other animals, or a combination of both. Animals that eat only plant matter are called herbivores. From the Latin herba, meaning green crop, and vorus, meaning devouring. Examples of herbivores are cattle, deer, and many aquatic species that eat algae. Animals that eat other animals are called carnivores. From the Latin carne, meaning flesh, and vorus, meaning devouring. Lions, sharks, snakes, and hawks are examples of carnivores. Animals that eat both plants and other animals are called omnivores. From the Latin omnes, meaning all, and vorus, meaning devouring. Humans, crows, and raccoons are examples of omnivores.
How wide is the lateral spread of the root system of trees?
The lateral spread of a tree's root system is 4 to 7 times greater than the spread of the crown of the tree.
How can a given trait have more than 2 alleles?
An allele is simply an alternate form of a gene. It is possible to have a number of variations for the same gene sequence, hence the term multiple alleles. In cases of multiple alleles, there is usually a dominance hierarchy or relational schematic that demonstrates which of every possible pair of alleles will be preferentially expressed.
How does kidney dialysis remove waste products from the body?
Damaged or diseased kidneys are not capable of removing toxic waste substances from the body. Kidney dialysis removes the nitrogenous waste and regulates the pH of the blood when the kidneys do not work. Blood is pumped from an artery through a series of tubes made of a permeable membrane and a dialysing solution. Urea and excess salts diffuse out of the blood as it circulates through the dialysing machine and are then discarded. Necessary ions diffuse from the dialysing solution back into the blood. The cleansed blood is then returned to the body.
How do cells respond to insulin?
Protein-based hormones such as insulin bind to cell surface receptors. While they do not enter the cell, they cause changes in the cell's metabolism. Specific cells in the pancreas secrete insulin, a hormone that regulates the concentration of glucose in the blood. Skeletal muscles and the liver are targets for insulin. Insulin deficiency is responsible for type 1 diabetes. In contrast, type 2 diabetes, also known as adult-onset diabetes mellitus, is not the result of insulin deficiency but is rather due to insulin resistance. Cells with insulin resistance do not respond to increasing insulin levels by transporting glucose into cells.
What is Chargaff's rule?
Chargaff's rule is based on the data generated by Edwin Chargaff, 1905 to 2002, in his study of the base composition of DNA from various organisms. By comparing the nitrogen base composition of various organisms, he found that in all double-stranded DNA, the amount of adenine equals the amount thymine, and amount of guanine equals the amount cytosine, A equals T, G equals C.
How does a ribosome participate in protein synthesis?
The ribosome serves as the site of translation. This combination of RNA and protein is a meeting place for mRNA and tRNA.
What are the precursors of the vascular tissue, ground tissue, and epidermis?
Soon after the plant embryo forms, the primary meristems develop. The protoderm, the precursor of the epidermis, forms in the outermost cells of the embryo. Vertical divisions within the embryo result in the distinction between the procambium, the precursor of the vascular tissue, and the ground meristem, the precursor of the ground tissue.
What do truffles look like?
Truffles have a rather unappealing appearance. They are somewhat round, but irregularly shaped, and have thick, rough, wrinkled skin that varies from off-white to almost black in color. The fruiting bodies present on truffles are fragrant, fleshy structures that usually grow to about the size of a golf ball. They range from white, gray, or brown to nearly black in color. There are nearly 70 known varieties of truffles, but the most desirable is the black truffle, also known as black diamond, that grows in France's Périgord and Corsi regions as well as Italy's Umbria region. The flesh of the black diamond appears to be black, but it is actually dark brown, and contains white striations. The flesh has an aroma that is extremely pungent. The second most popular is the white truffle, actually off-white or beige, of Italy's Piedmont region. Both the aroma and flavor of this truffle are earthy and garlicky. Fresh truffles are available from late fall to midwinter, and can be stored in the refrigerator for up to 3 days.
What is a peroxisome and what is its function in a cell?
Peroxisomes, also discovered by Christian de Duva, 1917, are surrounded by a single membrane and are the most common type of microbody in cells. They are especially prominent in algae, the photosynthetic cells of plants, and both mammalian kidney and liver cells. Peroxisomes contain detoxifying enzymes and produce catalase, which breaks down hydrogen peroxide into hydrogen and water.
Why do some biologists consider the insects the most successful group of animals?
With more than 1 million described species, and perhaps millions more not yet identified. Class Insecta is the most successful group of animals on Earth in terms of diversity. Geographic distribution, number of species, and number of individuals. More species of insects have been identified than of all other groups of animals combined. What insects lack in size, they make up for in sheer numbers. If we could weigh all the insects in the world, their weight would exceed that of all the remaining terrestrial animals. About 200 million insects are alive at any one time for each human.
What is the relationship between blue jays, monarch butterflies, and milkweed?
As part of their life cycle, female monarchs lay their eggs exclusively on milkweed plants. After a few days the eggs hatch and a yellow, black, and white striped caterpillar emerges from each egg. These caterpillars are totally dependent on milkweed plants. Although the plants contain toxic substances, cardinalides, that are poisonous to other animals, the toxin is harmless to the monarch. Blue jays, who spend much of their day searching for food, will often eat insects such as adult monarch butterflies to supplement their otherwise vegetarian diet. However, if the food tastes bad, the blue jays will vomit up the food and will then learn individually to avoid the food in the future. Thus, wild monarch butterflies with high levels of cardinalide concentrations are less susceptible to natural predation by birds. This is an example of operant conditioning in the wild.
How does DNA correct its own errors?
Spontaneous damage to DNA occurs at a rate of 1 event per billion nucleotide pairs per minute. Assuming this rate in a human cell, there are 10,000 different sites in the body at which DNA is damaged every 24 hours. DNA has a number of quality control mechanisms. DNA polymerase, the enzyme that catalyzes DNA replication, has a proofreading function that immediately corrects 99% of these errors during replication. Those errors that pass through are corrected by a mismatch repair system. When a mismatch base, such as Ag, is detected, the incorrect strand is cut and the mismatch is removed. The gap is then filled in with the correct base, and the DNA is reset-led.